Hello everybody, welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so today's video, we're going to talk about the upcoming foreclosure crisis. This is a substantial crisis that we are likely to face. We've got a lot of numbers and some charts and then some data here we're going to share with you. We want you to understand what the process is, like how foreclosure works, so you understand what this means in the real estate market.
Yes, and the tsunami that's coming.
Tsunami, big tsunami, shadow inventory. Okay. So I had to get shadow inventory in there because we haven't said it since 2013. Okay. Juana, what's the first thing that happens in foreclosure?
Well, somebody has to miss a mortgage payment.
Okay, you miss a payment. And if you've missed a payment for X period of time, the bank has the option to do what?
Send you a notice of default.
They send you a notice of default. They actually file. It's a legal filing, right? Right. And so they file it, they post a thing on your house, and then you have 90 days to do what?
To cure it.
To cure it.
That means get caught up with your loan or make some other arrangement with the lender.
Okay, let's say 90 days goes by and you don't do anything. Then what happens?
Notice of trustee sale.
Okay, notice of trustee sale. Now these are Nevada numbers. 28 days after that, it can be sold.
Right.
At the foreclosure sale. And then somebody buys the house.
Yes.
They sell it, somebody buys it. The bank doesn't just own your house. That's a myth that the bank always owns the house. Usually the bank doesn't own the house. Usually the bank sells it and somebody else buys it, right? Correct. Okay. All right. So we're going to first show you the numbers. These are the foreclosure numbers for the last 3 years here. As you can see, we have 2020, 2021, and 2022. 214,000 national foreclosures 2020. It dropped to 151,000 2021. 2022, it skyrocketed, creating a crisis. Huge number of foreclosures, over like more than double. They went from 151,000 to 324,000, right? Okay. It seems like this is a huge problem, doesn't it, when you first look at this?
Well, you know, who wouldn't think it's a huge problem? After all, we more than doubled year over year from 21 to 22.
Massive amount of foreclosures.
And then we had a 30% increase from 20 to 22.
Yeah, it was a huge increase from 20 to 22.
So,
and everyone remembers how bad 2020 was. That was the pandemic year, right?
Oh my goodness! You know that there were houses being foreclosed all over the place.
Everyone.
I mean, people were on the street. That there was mayhem.
It was terrible. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the chart. This is the next chart I'm going to show you. What's interesting about this chart is if you look all the way on the bottom right, those three numbers those are the numbers that you just saw. This is when you step back and look at this is the total foreclosure filings for the last almost 20 years. Okay, anything red is over 1 million. If you remember, Wanda, let's just go through this chart here. So 2011 was, call it the bottom of the housing market. There were 1.9 million foreclosures that year. The very next year, 1.8 million foreclosures. What did home prices do that year?
They went up.
Okay, 2013 with 1.4 million foreclosures. What happened to home prices in 2013?
Home prices went up.
What about the 1.1 million foreclosures in 2014?
Home prices went up.
2015, 1.1 million.
Home prices went up.
And then 933,000?
Home prices went up.
677,000?
Home prices went up.
624,000?
Home prices went up.
Okay, but isn't it true, though, that regardless of how many foreclosures there are, if it goes up, home prices have to fall? Like if you have one house foreclosed and the next year you have 2 houses foreclosed because the number's higher, doesn't that mean you're forced to sell?
Well, you know, we can absolutely see that between 2021 and 2022, foreclosures more than doubled, and home prices did. Oh wait, they went up by over 20%.
Okay, right. So So the reason why I'm making this video, we've got actually more data to show you, because once we show you the next piece of data, it's a real head scratcher. Okay, all this data comes from Atom. The level of foreclosures today are still well below the long-term normal number of foreclosures, like the normal number of homes in foreclosure in the U.S. It's ridiculously under the number of foreclosures. The other thing is that 324,000 number, I'm going to show you this quote. Adam reports foreclosure filings were reported on 324,000 properties in the U.S. in 2022, an increase 115% compared to 2021. We just saw that. Of those, lenders repossessed 42,000, a 67% increase compared to 2021. So of the foreclosures, why is it, Juana, there were 324 foreclosures, but only 42,000 houses were basically sold at the trustee sale? Why is that?
Okay, so out of 324,000, most people, so according to these figures, roughly about 88% of them made some sort of arrangement with the lender to bring the loan current or do some other financial arrangement that stopped the foreclosure process. So out of 324,000, they actually foreclosed on about 42,000, which is about 12% or so.
Right. So keep this in mind when you're seeing these videos where people are talking about the massive foreclosure crisis that's getting ready to hit. 42,000 properties is less than 1% of the homes we will sell this year. And this is the lowest. In a normal year, we sell about 6 million homes. I think the estimate was this year about 4.5 million would sell. Remember, there's under 1 million homes currently available in the U.S. on the market, right? Even if you added all 42,000 homes tomorrow, it would not move the needle. This is less than 1% of the total inventory. 1% of the total inventory. So we had somebody come on the video. One of the comments was the banks are holding on to all these. This is like shadow inventory part 2. There's this myth going around from some of the YouTubers that there's a massive amount of foreclosures getting ready to happen. And what they do is they see that 324 number and they assume that if it goes to 500,000, that there'll be 500,000 homes will flood the market. So
they don't assume, they know better. They're just using it for clickbait. I mean, let's be honest.
Okay.
Because these people are not unintelligent. They are purposely misleading their audience. And I think that's despicable, honestly.
Okay, so here's the problem. The word foreclosure to the average person means you lost your house. Mm-hmm. That is not what the word foreclosure means. The foreclosure is a process. And in that process, they go through all these steps. And in the end, if you haven't made up for the deficiency, your home is sold at the trustee sale. Some people call it the courthouse steps or whatever. It's usually like at a courthouse. It's in a public place where anyone can bid on the house. And then the houses are usually, most time, they're just put into the MLS. Like an investor buys them, puts them in the MLS and sells them. But even with that process, only 12% of the time does the house go to actual foreclosure sale. So here's an example. You miss some payments, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the notice. And what do people do when they get the legal notice posted on their door?
First, they freak.
They freak, okay.
Sometimes they're in denial and they just tear it down and pretend it didn't happen.
Okay.
And sometimes they call their lender, which is what we always tell people to do.
Okay.
Call their lender and work it out. And that workout may mean making modified payments for a period of time. It may mean simply putting the whole process on hold while they get the property sold. There are all kinds of ways to work it out with the lender. But you have to communicate. You can't hide.
Okay. The other thing that happens is they'll call a friend, relative, and say, "Hey, I need $5,000. I'm behind on my mortgage." Or they'll go borrow money on a credit card. They'll find money because they don't want to lose their house, especially if they have a ton of equity. The other thing that's going to happen is, Juana, you're very familiar with this, having done this in the past. Who are the people who knock on their doors when they're in default?
Oh, every investor known to man.
Investors. What are the investors trying to do?
They're trying to lowball them. So what they'll do is they will offer them money to get the loan caught up and sign over the property and give them some money to relocate, and they're gone. So basically what they're doing is a wraparound where they'll just take over the mortgage. They won't bother telling the mortgage company. They'll just bring the mortgage current, give the person money, and they can go away. Now, that's fine so long as that investor keeps making the mortgage payment.
Okay, you've done a bunch of these, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let's say, for example, that they owe $100,000. Mm-hmm. Then what would the deal maybe look like?
Well, so
no, they don't owe $100,000. They have $100,000 of equity in the house.
Okay.
And then let's say they're behind by $5,000.
Okay.
What would that deal look like?
So the investor is going to bring the property current. They'll give them some amount of money, whatever they negotiate.
10, 15, 20 grand maybe.
Yeah. and then the person gets to go away, and the investor walks into tons of equity. And particularly, most loans, of course, have really low interest rates, so the investors are very happy to keep up that loan, rent out that property for a good bit of money, and it's a win-win situation.
Right, especially today, if this person that you're taking over, if you're taking over their mortgage payment, now you get the deed to the house. The investor gets the deed to the house.
They do, so it's really interesting. So the investor gets the deed to the house on a wraparound, but the borrower is still liable for the loan. The way to alleviate the borrower from that responsibility is to do a regular assumption. And a qualified assumption is what's best for the seller, because then they are relieved of the loan obligation to the lender, and the new buyer is now obligated for the loan.
Okay. I'm going to put this chart back up to show you something. 324,000 clearly is not a substantial number, knowing that 88% of the time the house never actually gets foreclosed. And if you look back at this chart, then we should have been terrified in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, because all of those years had more foreclosure filings, right? That's what it says. That's the number they're telling you, foreclosure filings, but it's not repossessed homes. That's a substantially different number. So you're being lied to by a lot of agents and a lot of people who are trying to scare you. A lot of times they're trying to convince you the market's going to crash, so you will call them to sell your house, right?
Or people who will scare you so that you will sell your house to them.
Cheap. Hey, look, the house's properties are going to fall. Let me buy your house. Super cheap, right? Honestly, until this number gets above about 1.5, I'm not too worried about it. That would be a lot. I don't think it's going to get that high.
So there's nothing that would indicate that, especially with people having really low mortgage payments. Let's face it, most people who have a $1,500 mortgage payment, they couldn't rent something even a fraction as nice as what they're living in for the same amount in rent. So most people will do whatever it takes to hang on to that mortgage and stay in that house, because that is what's best for them and their families.
And if anyone tries to tell you, but back during the COVID pandemic in 2020, there were millions of houses foreclosed. Not true. The number they posted was like 3 or 4 million, and it was people in default of the mortgage, period. There was if you look at 2020, there were only 214,000. There were probably 30,000 foreclosures for the entire year in the U.S. It was at the time the lowest number in 30 years. 2021 was also was the lowest number probably in 40 years for total foreclosures.
Because remember, in 2020 and 2021, all you had to do was call your servicer and say the word COVID. That was all you had to do, and you automatically got 6 months.
Oh, not only that, you could just put your house on the market and sell it. Hey, I'm behind on my mortgage 3 months, but I have $200,000 equity. Well, why would you want to get foreclosed and lose all that? Just sell the house. So a lot of these people sold the house. A lot of the people that were upside down, or not upside down, but that were behind the mortgage payment just sold the house. So just be careful when you're seeing these crazy numbers in videos where they say foreclosures are up 115%, and this means you're forced to sell, or they throw out these words to scare people, but they're misleading you, because this is the truth. 324,000 total, and there was like 42,000 actual sales, less than 1% of the total U.S. inventory, total U.S. number of sales in the year. That doesn't move the needle. Like 1% more houses coming onto the market doesn't crash the market. It doesn't do anything. The market doesn't even know, especially when these aren't, like Wanda said, some of these are inquired by investors, and then they're just kept as rentals. Right.
So if you thought the video was interesting, if you muted us and just looked at the chart, that's all good too.
They can't hear you then.
If you liked the video, if it was interesting, if you learned something, if you like data and if you like charts, please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about all this fascinating information about foreclosures. We love getting your take on everything, so we look forward to your comments, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.